So
Hmm.
regardless of what's going on, whether it's good or you may deem it negative, when you're consistently thankful and grateful and expressing gratitude, it changes and shifts like how you think.
Welcome to another episode of the Happy Friday Committee, Happy Friday Committee Mindset. Today we have a special guest, Miss Adrienne Brown Cheeks, who is a supply chain manager who has a lot of experience in corporate America. And I invited her on today to get her perspective on the Happy Friday Committee mindset, which is being fearless, resilient, intuitive, determined, appreciative, and youthful. And I want to frame this in what you do, your expertise in supply chain management. So, how are you doing today, Adrienne?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thank you for
I am
having me.
excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent.
Awesome.
Every
Awesome.
day is Friday. So,
Every day.
so, so I am excellent. I am excellent. I want to jump right into it with the first question. What does fearless mean to you?
So fearless is when, although you may have some reservations, some concerns, you still move forward, right? So even when you're presented with obstacles that say, you know what, you're not prepared, you're not confident, etc., you still say, you know what, I'm going to push forward regardless. So
Mm,
that's what fearless is to me, right? So it's not that you don't experience fear, but you actually push past it.
excellent. Can you give us a time in corporate America when you experienced like a time of when you experienced fear?
Oh, experience fear. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. So I will tell you, anyone who has been in this supply chain planning space, especially as a manager, depending on the industry. So typically, like if you think healthcare, if you think pharmaceuticals, oftentimes things escalate very quickly.
Mm,
And one example of where I had experienced some, I'll just call them concerns, is we had what you called tier one shutdowns. So that is essentially a supplier doesn't get what they need, and they don't go to you, they don't go to your director, they bypass the VP, and they go straight to the C-suite.
wow.
And yeah, so as you can imagine, it's hair on fire, right? Because you don't
Wow.
really have time to try to resolve it yourself. Between you and your customer, you have to resolve it with a ton of visibility, a ton of exposure, and so there's a lot of anxiety that comes along with that. But
Wow.
what I do to help mitigate fear in those instances is actually try to build relationships beforehand, right?
Mm,
So I want the people in the C-suite to hear my voice, see my face, see my communications before we get to the point of a tier one, right? So
mm,
that when we're there, they're one confident and know that I can manage through the issue, and then two, they give me a little bit more grace because they know me, right? And they've
uh-huh.
built that, and we've built that rapport. Um, so yeah, that's how I've managed in the past.
Wow. So with that, you mentioned issue uh, between is it you said somebody not receiving a particular product.
Yes, a customer not receiving product from a supplier.
So how do you bounce back from that in terms of issues may arise?
Right.
How do you bounce back, become resilient in that with that if you have a disgruntled customer, how do you bounce
Yeah.
back from that?
Right. So, and I don't want to get too business, right? Because sometimes you want to kind of lean on the personal. But, in those times you really want to look for opportunities to mitigate in the future, right?
Mm,
So you're gonna attempt to build a rapport with that customer too, right? Because we already messed up. So the customer doesn't have confidence in us,
mm,
right? So you want to restore that confidence with that customer. And you do that by making the issue right? So resolving the current matter very quickly. And then also, continue to touch base, but then figure out, well, what was the root cause? How did we miss this? Right.
mm,
And so if you figure out how you missed it, you can figure out how to create an improvement or some type of process around it so it doesn't happen again. So that's what kind of helps to build, some resilience there, right? So when I think of resilience, I think, we're bouncing back from this. So the bounce back is how do we mess up to start with? And
mm.
then how do we mitigate it in the future? And that helps to create resilience even in future occurrences or potential occurrences. We'll say it that way.
Excellent, excellent. Good answer. Good answer. The next principle is intuition, intuitive. What does that mean to you? And can you give us a time in your life or times in your life when you
Right.
were intuitive?
Oh my goodness. So I have a ton of instances. And so when I think of intuition, a lot of people think about something that comes from themselves, right? So something like internal that tells them, hey, whether it's good or bad, this is going to be a good thing or this is going to be a bad thing, sort of like the internal thing, right? So we all have it. Some of us, it's a little more refined and honed in because we listen to it. But then too, personally speaking, I believe in a higher power, right? That also speaks to us and gives us sort of this, subtle inkling that something may be positive, something may be negative that
Absolutely.
occurs. So, with that, all the time when it comes to intuition, so I will say I'm trying to think of a time professionally. Oh, so and this happens probably relatively often with people who are in leadership roles, right? So you get like this sense, depending on how a person is moving on your team, right, within your group, you
Uh-huh.
get a sense of, um, let's say, are they planning to want to stay and develop with the organization, or are they going to tell us, we can kick rocks in about 2 weeks, right? So, know, intuition can also be, being observant to the small details that occur in our environment,
Uh-huh.
right? So for me, I've had that happen a couple of times where you kind of get this like inkling, like somebody may be considering moving on. And so usually what I do is I respond to what it is that I'm feeling. And, in that particular instance, I'll approach the person and just, have like a one-on-one, like, how's it going? Check in the temperature. How are you feeling?
Wow.
And usually you'll get more insight, and some people are really transparent and they'll tell you like, yeah, I'm looking, I'm not interested in saying, or, they'll let you know, well, I'm considering it. And it gives you an opportunity to like respond in that time, if you want the person to stay on the team, to encourage them, to remain and, talk through opportunities for them to stay. So I know that was kind of long, but
Oh,
that's
that's
how,
excellent. I mean, that was spot on. That was
yeah.
great. The next principle is being determined. How do you remain determined in your role?
Yeah. So really determination comes internally, especially when you're in a corporate space. Full transparency, um, oftentimes, especially, and I don't know how frank people tend to be, right, during their interview,
Uh-huh.
but like I'm not gonna hold back, right? Especially when you're in certain spaces and you're a person of color.
Yes.
So for me, supply chain management, the leadership part has been really focused heavily on promoting people that don't look like me,
Yes.
right? Pushing them forward, tapping them for projects, etc. So if you're not somebody who really has that, I'm going to get it regardless, you're probably not going to be as successful in that space. So for me, determination, when I think about it, for someone who looks like me in this
Hmm.
space, I encourage people when it comes to their career. Look, if you're not getting what you need from your current organization, uh, move on. And when you move on, always look to be moving to that next step. So if today I'm a supply chain planner and I want to be a supply chain manager and I'm not getting it in my current organization, when I look for that next role, I'm looking to land a supply chain manager position when I go into that organization.
Mm.
And then two, let's say you just love your company. There's some people who are just like, I love me some XYZ ABC Mark.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes.
And they want to stay with that company. Well, I will also encourage them. If you're not getting the traction and movement that you need, it is still okay to leave and you can come back. So you go get your supply chain manager position. And then let's say 2 years later, you come back and knock on the door and say, hey, I don't want supply chain manager. I want director because I've already been in this role. Right. So I want a director at ABC Mark because I love the company so much. And now I've got the skills that I need to get what I want. So you definitely have to have internal drive to get what you need, especially in corporate period. That's the truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Making the adjustment, pivot.
Yep. Pivot shift, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Once
Exactly.
you accomplish your goals, hit your targets, how do you feel and how do you remain thankful and appreciative?
Oh my goodness. So how do I feel? So we'll start with how do I feel? I feel accomplished, right?
Mm.
Um, I feel excited and proud of myself. So I'll share with you, and this isn't something that you don't already know. So back in, gosh, I'm getting all the years mixed up. Look, since the pandemic, like
Yeah, yeah,
it's all
yeah.
all
Yes,
over the
ma'am.
place. But let's see, I want to say it was 2021. I was working a 9 to 5. We were integrating or migrating to SAP. We
Uh-huh.
were segregating out all these new roles. I was pregnant and I was getting my MBA.
Uh-huh.
You couldn't tell me anything, honey. I was like, I'm amazing. I did that. Go away, right? So I
Yes,
feel
ma'am.
great. I feel great. But afterwards, like I always have this desire to keep like moving forward. Like, well, what's the next thing? Like, what's the next goal?
Uh-huh.
That I want to hit and achieve, whether it's like professionally or personally. So that's how I feel. And I will say I forgot the second part of your question because I think it was a 2 or 3 part question. So
Yes.
remind me, I'm sorry.
I said, how do you remain thankful? How do you remain?
Thankful, yes. So actually, last week I had the opportunity to share a study on thankfulness, right?
Uh-huh.
And like I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to go too deep, right?
Uh-huh.
But there's something about being remaining in a space of thankfulness, right? So
Hmm.
regardless of what's going on, whether it's good or you may deem it negative, when you're consistently thankful and grateful and expressing gratitude, it changes and shifts like how you think,
Yes,
right? Your thoughts become different,
absolutely.
um, and they tend to lean towards the positive. Even when you find yourself in places where it's like really hard,
Hmm.
if you just sit for a couple of seconds, and this has been my experience, sit for a few seconds and say, I'm grateful for, and you can start small, right? I'm grateful for the fact that I can see today, or I can walk today, or I have my family,
Yes.
my village, etc. Like it really starts to shift how you feel. I was driving last Wednesday when I was preparing to do the study, right?
Uh-huh.
And traffic, it should have taken me 30 minutes to get where I was going, and the traffic was a disaster.
Uh-huh.
People cut me off, and I was like, ah,
Yes,
we're going
ma'am.
to talk about thankfulness, right?
Uh-huh.
So as I'm driving, I'm like, you know what? I'm thankful for the fact that, we're safe. We haven't been in an accident. All these reasons to be thankful. And by the time I got to the study, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm thankful. I'm positive.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
thankful. So it changes your thoughts, right? And how you
Absolutely.
respond to life. And I'll share this one last thing about thankfulness. And like I said, I don't want to get too deep. But part of the study, I was reading a scripture, and in that scripture, I want to say it was like Luke 34,
Uh-huh.
35. And the very last line grouped ungrateful people with what the term wicked. And I
Wow.
was like, I think that speaks
Wow.
volumes to
Absolutely.
how people who are ungrateful are classified. I'm gonna just leave it there and let
Wow.
your listeners take away what they need. But yes, you got to remain in a place of thankfulness and gratefulness. And I'm speaking to myself also.
Absolutely. And I think that leads to the next principle, which is being youthful.
Yes. Okay. So I don't
How,
want to deviate.
yeah,
Yeah.
they both have a relationship.
Yeah, they do.
So,
They
so
do.
what does that mean to you, being youthful?
Yeah. So being youthful to me is not just like trying to live a life of like a young person, but like staying sharp. And I'm gonna bring that to the professional side, and then I'll kind of talk personally.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, when I relate youthfulness to professionalism, like you got to stay on top of your skills always, right?
Absolutely.
You should always be learning, because learning also helps the brain, right, to
Mm-hmm.
stay youthful. But I'll tell you a quick story. I was hiring planners, and I had this gentleman who had applied for a planning position.
Mm-hmm.
And he was amazing. Like his demeanor, like how he presented.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was like, oh my God, I hired this guy. But
Mm-hmm.
when it came to his skills right off, he said, I don't know Excel. I don't know Access. I don't know
Oh,
SAP. Like I would have to learn all these systems and tools.
wow.
And I said to myself, self, what is it that you could share with this gentleman today? Because, you know, most organizations, when they're looking to hire, unless they're doing like this mass, hire because they're just growing so quickly. And even then, oftentimes they don't have time to train you on 50 million tools, like maybe
Absolutely.
one, right? Hey, I don't
Absolutely.
understand like SAP or whatever it is. They may say, okay, yeah, we're going to invest in you and in that time. But if you start rattling off all these systems that you don't know, they start asking questions like, well, what have you been doing? Like, we understand you've
That's
been,
amazing he said that.
yeah, like,
I never.
I, yes. And like I said, he was a super transparent, very laid back, really, he was a good guy. So I just encouraged him, like, to say, we unfortunately don't have the bandwidth to train on all these tools, right?
Uh-huh.
So I would encourage you, in the future, like just continue to hone your skills, like continue
Yeah.
to grow your skills. So that kind of is a good segue into youthfulness personally. And that is, you know, if you're trying to stay young mentally, like you need to do like the mental work, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Wow.
whether
Good point.
it's, yeah, whether it's like reading a book, um, whether it's like staying up on current events,
Mm.
um, even if you're not wanting to do a ton of exercise, at least like stretch, do those
Absolutely.
things that are going to help you like stay like sharp mentally and then physically able to like go, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah,
Man,
that's
That's
Yeah.
a good
Yeah.
point. That's an excellent point because
So
most
I,
people. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
So I did want to share. So just to kind of go back to the conversation around like learning skills and staying sharp and learning and training.
Uh-huh.
I do. I just launched a course. It's called Career, the number two, Supply Chain. And it's focused on individuals who want to learn supply chain management, specifically supply chain planning, so that they can, add to their skill set. And then also, it's a hidden gem. It's a very lucrative career that I don't think a lot of people even are aware of.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, I had a very and I share this in the course.
Yeah. Is there a website for that as well? Like
Yeah,
where I
so
can post that? Okay.
it's career to supply chain.com.
Excellent.
Career, the number
Excellent.
two, supply chain.com.
Excellent.
And so I share in the course, there is a well-known organization who approached me about a planning manager position. And this was in the last 2 months. And their compensation was between 210 and 240 for a manager position, right? The great thing about supply chain management is that you have the ability to say yes or no. And I mean, you basically call the shots for yourself.
Wow.
So whether it's, I have preferences about working from home or going on site, or here's my compensation requirement. Once you learn that skill, I mean, you can go anywhere with it.
That's
So
it. Wow.
I have a fantastic offer for your listeners, and that is if they go to career to supply chain.com and they enroll in the course, they can use offer Happy Friday to get a 10% discount.
Excellent. Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's it. So go there. We'll post that up on the website as well. Um,
Awesome.
so the last question, out of all these principles being fearless, resilient, intuitive, determined, appreciative, and youthful, which one of these principles stick out to you the most and why?
Yeah. So I would say thankfulness, right? I
Okay.
think I talked pretty in depth about that. But it's thankfulness because it changes the way that you see things and experience the world, right?
Okay.
Yeah. If you can remain in this space of like always finding gratitude and looking for gratitude, you're going to remain in a space of somewhat of contentment, and it will help you to be more determined, and it'll give you more drive, and it'll help you to be resilient.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah.
That's excellent. That's excellent. You have a lot of quotable quotes here.
Oh yeah, okay.
You do. You do. I like that. I like that. So, yeah. So, excellent. But I want to, my time is running out. So, but I want to thank you for coming on and doing this interview. And I know this is going to help a lot of people.
I'm glad to hear. Well, thank you for having me, Jason, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right, take